Hello everyone. What's up? Welcome to the Trending News channel. Hope you will enjoy our video. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Here is the news title. Multiple Democrats caused disruptions before and during President Trump's speech to a joint session of Congress on Tuesday despite calls from many in the party not to do so. Shortly into Trump's speech, Democratic Representative Al Green stood up and began shouting at the president and waving his cane at him. Members are engaging in willful and continuing breach of decorum, and the chair is prepared to direct the sergeant-at-arms to restore order to the joint session, House Speaker Mike Johnson said in response to the jeers from the crowd. Speaker Johnson then ordered the sergeant-at-arms to remove Green from the chamber, and he was escorted out. Green, one of Trump's most vocal critics, has already filed impeachment articles against Trump over what he called ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Earlier in the day, some Democrats warned that antics during the speech should be avoided, including former Kamala Harris 2024 senior advisor Ian Sams. Democrats, please do not do dumb sh. like this during Trump's speech, former Harris 2024 senior advisor Ian Sams posted on X Tuesday. Green told reporters after being removed that he objected to Trump saying he had a mandate. "I was making it clear to the president that he has no mandate to cut Medicaid," Green said. "I have people who are very fearful. These are poor people, and they have only Medicaid in their lives when it comes to their health care. And I want him to know that his budget calls for deep cuts in Medicaid. He needs to save Medicaid, protect it." Green added that he is willing to suffer whatever punishment is available to me. "I didn't say to anyone, 'Don't punish me,'" Green said. "I've said I'll accept the punishment." Representative Melanie Stansbury, Democrat New Mexico, silently protested Trump as he walked to the podium ahead of his address on Tuesday night. Stansbury, the top Democrat on House DOJ subcommittee, held up a sign reading, "This is not normal," as Trump greeted people nearby. Republic. Lance Gooden, Republican Texas, appeared to grab the paper from Stansbury and threw it. He stood across the aisle from her, along with fellow Republicans. So what do you guys think about this update? Let me know in the comment below. If you like my video, please press like button and subscribe for more. Hope I'll see you in next video. It was a night that promised to be historic. President Donald Trump addressing a joint session of Congress. The venue was the magnificent House chamber, the place where decisions of national consequence were made and debated. For many, it was a night for tradition and formal discourse, a moment to hear the president speak on matters of national interest and share his vision for the future. However, it would not be a typical State of the Union speech. Not this night. This evening, the political atmosphere would crackle with tension and uncertainty. Democrats, divided in their response to Trump's presidency, had expressed mixed emotions about his looming address. Many knew the president's words would be controversial, as they always were. But some, particularly the more vocal critics, were not content to simply listen or respond in the safety of their districts. No, they had come with the intention of making their voices heard, loudly and unmistakably. A handful of Democratic lawmakers had already voiced their concern about the optics, urging their colleagues to exercise restraint. But some could not remain silent. The day had begun with a series of warnings. In a heated and impassioned plea posted on X, formerly Twitter, Ian Sams, the senior advisor to Kamala Harris's 2024 campaign, had voiced a cautionary message to his fellow Democrats. "Democrats, please do not do dumb sh. like this during Trump's speech." The message was clear. A plea for decorum, a call for the party to rise above the drama and demonstrate a sense of maturity, even in the face of a president they deeply opposed. The sentiment was echoed by other Democratic leaders, who feared that any disruption during Trump's address would not only play into his narrative, but also damage their party's image ahead of the 2024 election. They had hoped for a night of dignified opposition, where the sharpest criticism could come through thoughtful responses, rather than the chaotic, visceral outbursts that had become a trademark of the Trump era. But despite these calls for restraint, there was no stopping the storm that was about to break. Shortly into Trump's speech, as the president spoke about his plans to strengthen the American economy and secure the nation's borders, a figure in the chamber stood and shouted. It was Democratic Representative Al Green of Texas, a vocal critic of Trump, whose disdain for the president had led him to introduce articles of impeachment against Trump more than once. "Impeach him! Impeach him!" Green cried, raising his cane in the air as he aimed his fury directly at the president. The moment was electric, charged with emotion. Green, who had become known for his outspoken activism, had long accused Trump of racism, corruption, and moral failure. His latest indictment of the president, accusing him of ethnic cleansing in Gaza, had further heightened tensions. Shockwaves through the chamber, and for a moment, the collective breath of Congress seemed to catch. The dignified tone of the evening was immediately shattered. Speaker Mike Johnson, who had taken the gavel, quickly took action. His voice cut through the murmurs and jeers of the crowd. "Members are engaging in a willful and continuing breach of decorum," Speaker Johnson declared. "The chair is prepared to direct the sergeant-at-arms to restore order to the joint session." And with that, it was clear. The moment had escalated beyond the control of the lawmakers present. Green, one of Trump's fiercest critics, was escorted out of the chamber by the sergeant-at-arms, his cane still waving in defiance as he was led away. After being removed, Green made his case to reporters outside the chamber. He explained that his protest was a direct response to Trump's claims about having a mandate from the American people. "I was making it clear to the president that he has no mandate to cut Medicaid," Green said passionately. "I have people who are very fearful. These are poor people, and they have only Medicaid in their lives when it comes to their health care." Green had long been an advocate for the preservation of Medicaid, and he was particularly vocal about Trump's proposed budget cuts, which would severely affect low-income families. "His budget calls for deep cuts in Medicaid," Green added. "He needs to save Medicaid, protect it. I'm willing to suffer whatever punishment is available to me," Green asserted, his resolve firm. "I didn't say to anyone, 'Don't punish me.' I've said, 'I'll accept the punishment.'" Green's words were not just a defense of his actions, but a declaration of his deep conviction. For him, the stakes were too high to remain silent in the face of what he perceived as dangerous policies. Melanie Stansbury's silent protest. As the chamber slowly returned to some semblance of order after Green's disruption, another figure quietly made her own stand. Representative Melanie Stansbury of New Mexico, known for her calm and thoughtful demeanor, chose to engage in a form of protest that was quieter but no less powerful. As Trump made his way to the podium to deliver his address, Stansbury stood and held up a sign that read, "This is not normal." The words were stark, a direct commentary on the sense of chaos and disruption that had marked Trump's presidency. Stansbury's sign was not just a critique of Trump. It was a statement about the very state of American democracy under his leadership. Her gesture was simple yet powerful, an act of resistance against the normalization of what many saw as unprecedented behaviors from the highest office in the land. But her act of dissent would not go unchallenged. Representative Lance Gooden, a Republican from Texas, noticed the sign and without hesitation, marched across the aisle. In a swift motion, he snatched the sign from Stansbury's hands and, in a dramatic gesture, tossed it away. His actions met with a mixture of gasps and murmurs from the surrounding lawmakers. The scene was charged with tension. Two lawmakers, one from each side of the aisle, locked in a symbolic struggle. On the one hand, Stansbury's silent protest spoke to the deep sense of unease that many Americans felt under Trump's leadership. On the other, Gooden's forceful action represented the Republican Party's unyielding support for the president, a show of loyalty in the face of criticism. The aftermath, a divided Congress. The evening continued in the wake of these disruptions, with Trump pressing forward in his address. However, the damage had been done. The speech, which was meant to showcase unity and deliver a message of national purpose, had become the backdrop for a series of contentious protests. The energy in the chamber was palpable, a mixture of unease and defiance, as lawmakers struggled to regain focus on the president's words. As the night wore on, the fallout from the protests began to spread beyond the chamber. Democratic leaders were faced with difficult questions about the propriety of their colleagues' actions. Some praised Green and Stansberry for their courage in standing up to the president, while others expressed concern that such disruptions only played into Trump's narrative of an out-of-control, chaotic opposition. The next day, headlines across the nation focused on the disruptions, framing the night as a clash between Trump's supporters and those who were determined to resist him at any cost. The protests would be analyzed and dissected, and for many, the spectacle would reinforce their feelings about the deep divisions in the country. In the days following the speech, the Democratic Party found itself at a crossroads. On one hand, there were those who believed that the actions of Green and Stansberry had been necessary, a vital expression of the frustrations and fears many Americans had about the Trump administration. For them, the protests were a wake-up call, a moment to remind the president and the country that resistance to his policies was alive and well. On the other hand, there were those who feared that such acts of defiance would only alienate moderates and independents, driving a wedge between the party and the voters they needed to defeat Trump in the 2024 election. The delicate balance between protest and strategy, between moral conviction and political calculation, would be a constant source of debate as the election year approached. As for Trump, the speech had achieved its goal in some ways. He had remained largely unshaken by the disruptions, using the moment to frame himself as a strong leader who could withstand the jeers and protests of his critics. His base, ever loyal, would see the night as yet another victory in his fight against the establishment. In the end, the events of that night became more than just a flashpoint in the ongoing battle between President Trump and the Democratic Party. They became a symbol of the growing tensions within American politics. Tensions that were not just ideological but deeply personal, touching on issues of power, morality, and the very soul of the nation. The protests, loud and disruptive as they were, reflected a deep sense of urgency, a feeling that the stakes had never been higher. As the year progressed, the memory of that night would linger, a reminder that in times of great division, the fight for democracy often takes unexpected and dramatic forms. For Democrats, it was a reminder that the road ahead would not be easy, and for Trump, it was a reminder that even the most powerful leader cannot escape the weight of dissent.